So in this series of videos, we're going to be investigating a realistic but synthetic data set provided by Tableau to see how we can convert individual databases or individual sheets, if we're thinking about an Excel land, to a more unified logical framework, and then how we can use that data framework to build visualizations and answer important business questions. So to get started, let's actually take a look at these data in Excel, because I think most of us are probably more familiar and comfortable with kind of the Excel sheet-based paradigm than the kind of more Tableau relationship or join paradigm that we're going to be talking about in a moment. But in Excel, this data set is not super bad. I mean, it's a bunch of sheets. So we have a sheet about the books themselves that has a book ID and the title and the author ID. Then we have a sheet about the author that has the author ID, their name, and some other information, and kind of so on and so on and so on, all the way down to sales by quarter. And so obviously there's a lot of different pieces here, and one of the reasons I like data sets like this, even though they aren't real, they are realistic in the sense that in business or in other applications, a lot of times you have many different processes that are each generating their own data stream, and part of the challenge, especially at the beginning of the data analytics lifecycle, is combining these different streams into some kind of coherent whole that you can start to analyze. That's a really tough part, and that's where we're going to start our investigation with Tableau. So let's go ahead and get this thing running. So it's as easy as opening up Tableau and then pointing it to the Bookshop dataset wherever you have it. Here I have it in my Downloads folder. And what we'll see when we open this is that Tableau gives us the sheets directly. You know, it's just listing out like which of these sheets do you want to import, and then in particular, how are these sheets going to be related to one another. So let's drag in book first. What you'll see is that you get a preview of the sheet itself, just as we saw in Excel. And now, if we just have this book by itself, we could make visualizations, but only about book. But oftentimes, almost all the time, this is not something that's sufficient. We want more than that. So I think a natural place from a business perspective to start would be, well, what are we going to do with sales? Like how are books actually selling? How are authors selling? Like let's get the sales piece in there, because that's really where the money is being made or lost, right? So let's look at sales real quick. And to look at it, let's click here and then do the little spreadsheet button next to it that pops up, and it's just a view data kind of quick view here. So notice that in the sales data sheet here, we have ISBN, which is the International Standard Book Number, which is basically like a universal SKU number that everybody uses. We have an item ID, we have an order ID, we have a sale date, and we have a discount rate. I don't see anything about the book itself in here. There's nothing to relate this book to these books. So there's something strange going on, and we need to start parsing that out. So somehow we need to relate this ISBN, which represents a book, to this book ID, which represents a book. So, you know, if you are the data engineer, or if you are close to the data source, you understand what each one of these tables does. And I mean, you have to assume at some point that you do have data understanding. If we're coming at this from a completely naive perspective, it really is a matter of just kind of a scavenger hunt. We have to just look through the data set itself to see if we can't find the linkages between these sheets that will create what we want. So for instance, for me, I would think the very first thing that I might look into is info, and we'll take a look. But notice that this has things related to book ID, but it does not have anything related to ISBN, so this isn't going to quite solve our problem. So instead, let's look at edition. And so edition actually has both the book ID and the ISBN. And let's see why this is important. So if I take this edition and drag it in, notice what happens. I get this orange, what they call a noodle, and that is the technical term of art. This noodle represents a relationship between the book datasheet and the edition datasheet. And more particularly, Tableau is saying, I think that the book ID and the relation and in the book ID column in the book datasheet is the same as the book ID column in the edition datasheet. Is that correct? It's basically just saying to you, confirm to me that this is what you mean, and it is. Like the book ID here is the book ID here, and it's going to relate those two. And what we mean by that then is if we have, we can come back to it, but basically it's going to relate these two things across these data sheets through these relationships. And now what I can do is actually drag my sales here. And what this is going to say is, I think that the ISBN in the edition datasheet is the same thing as the ISBN in the sales Q1 datasheet. Is that correct? And this is what we mean. So notice what's happening here. We're gradually building up relationships between disparate data sources by linking columns in one data sheet to columns in another data sheet. The technical term of art here is a foreign key, although that's not super important. Maybe you've seen it other places. And basically what it's saying is this key over here, this thing that we're keying off of, like an ISBN or a book ID, is the same thing as this key over here that we're keying off of, like a book ID or an ISBN. So in this way, we can link data sheets together and really take simple or smaller data sets and make much larger ones.